Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Parampara Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Kadurvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavidvijavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll continue where we left off. So today we are on the verse number 19 of chapter 6. So we'll chant that. Sri Bhagavanuvacha
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Yatha Deepo Nivatastaha
Yatha Deepo Nivatastaha
Nengate Sopama Smrita
Ningate Sopama Smrita
Yogina Yata Chittasya
Yogino Yata Chittasya
Yunjato Yogamatmanaha
Yunjato Yogamatmanaha.
Okay, so you'll recall that we were talking about Nidhi Dhyasanam. So Atmani Avavatishtate, we had said, talk about Nidhi Dhyasanam. And we mentioned that our normal state is that I am the Ahankara and Sakshi is a dress that I put on. That is a normal state for a Vedantic student. For a non-Vedantic student, for Ajnani, of course, the Sakshi is not there at all. So we are not discussing that. But for a Vedantic student who is in the process of getting Jnanam, he knows about the Sakshi. And therefore, Ahankara is the normal state. The one who wears the dress is Ahankara. The Veshi is Ahankara. Sakshi is the dress, the Vesham. So the normal state of a Vedantic student is Ahankara is the Veshi, Sakshi is the Vesham, the dress. And we said when you do Nidhi Dhyasanam, it involves the reversal of these roles. And at least during the Nidhi Dhyasanam, the Veshi, the one who wears the dress, is Sakshi. And the Veshi knows that Ahankara, the RC, is the Vesham, the dress. And therefore, any defect belongs to the dress alone and not to the Sakshi. The objective of Nidhi Dhyasanam is to ensure that this becomes the normal state. That Sakshi becomes the Veshi, the owner of the dress, and Ahankara, the RC, becomes the dress. And this state of mind is now being discussed further in this particular verse. So here he says, Upama. This is not the Upama which you eat. The Upama. An analogy. Upama is an example, an analogy. So the technical definition is Upamiyate Anya iti Upamaha. That by which Upamiyate, a comparison can be done. Upamiyate Anya. That by which you can compare something to something else. Iti Upama. That is a Upama. That is an example. What is the example given here? Yatha Deepaha Nivatastaha Nengate. Just as a Deepaha, of a lamp, an open lamp, kept in a place where the wind is there, it flickers. Why? Because of the disturbing breeze. And what happens to the flame? It moves in all directions depending upon in which direction the breeze is going. But Yatha Deepaha Nivatastaha. Nivataha. Windless place. Vata is wind. Nivataha. Windless place. So the same lamp kept shielded from the wind, so kept in a windless place. Na ingate. It does not flicker at all. It becomes steady. And this is being compared to the mind of the Nivibhyasaka. In meditation also, your mind is like the flame. The steady flame shielded from the wind, which does not move at all. This is being compared to the state of a mind in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And what is the flame over here? The flame is the Akhanda Akara Vrittihi. We said, what is the Akhanda Akara Vrittihi? What is the meaning of Akhanda Akara?
When there is no division. Akhanda.
Akhanda, which cannot be divided. And therefore, whenever you say Akhanda Akara Vrittihi, it's a technical term for the thought, I am Brahman, because Brahman cannot be divided. And therefore, Aham Brahma Asmi Vritti, Aham Atma Asmi Vritti. This is the Akhanda Akara Vrittihi. The steady flame which does not move is like this particular thought. This Atma Akara Vrittihi is not disturbed, does not move. It is not disturbed by the winds which are the Anatma Akara Vrittihi. So the wind is Anatma thought. The Atma thought is the flame. And the Atma thought, the Akhanda Akara Vrittihi, is not disturbed by the Anatma wind. Okay. Now, there is a further part of this comparison. How does one protect the flame from the wind? You have to have an enclosure, right? So you can think of the hurricane lamp, where the flame is covered by a glass enclosure. And therefore, that part of the example should also be covered. What is the enclosure for the mind? You require an enclosure which we call Vairagyam, dispassion, and Bhakti. Right? So, Nivatastaha Deepaha Yatha. If you look at the words, Yatha Deepaha Nivatastaha. So, Yatha Deepaha, just as a lamp which is kept, that you have to supply, Yatha Deepaha, just as a lamp which is kept, where Nivataha Staha. Nivata is, Vata is wind, Nivata without wind, Staha remaining. So, Yatha Deepaha Nivataha Staha. Just as a lamp kept or remaining in a place without wind, na ingate, does not flicker at all. Sa upma, sa upama, this example, smrita, the flickerless flame is an example for smrita. Smrita, and Shankara adds here, smrita normally means thought, memory. Shankara adds here, smrita should be taken as chintita, considered as. Considered as what? This example is considered by yoga experts, by those who are Shastra experts in yoga and its ways, and the ways of the mind, right? Yoga Shastra experts are experts in the way of the mind, and such experts, they divide thoughts into how many types of thoughts from Yoga Shastram? Do you remember?
5, Acharya.
What is the sutra?
Vrittaya panchataiva klishta klishta hai.
Very good. Vrichaya panchataya klishta aklishta. There are 5 types of thought. Klishta aklishta. Some of them are painful. Some of them are non-painful. That is the 5th sutra of the Yoga Sutras. And what are they? Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Nutaya. These are the five types of thoughts which are talked about by Yoga Shastra. But here we are looking at a different angle. We should not get ourselves so involved in the study of all these matters. We should not get ourselves so involved in the study of the vritti that we begin to think of the vritti as satyam. So a very important part. Yoga Shastram is duality. For them, vritti is satyam. And once something is satyam, by definition, you can never eliminate that. And therefore, that becomes a very major obstacle for us. That is why in Vedanta, we do not talk about chitta vritti nirodha. We do not talk about eliminating thoughts at all. What do we say? The whole aim of Vedanta is to understand that vritti is mithya. We aim at falsifying the mind and the products of the mind, which are the thoughts. And for us, we have understood Vedanta when we understand that manaha mithya, the mind is mithya, and whatever is seen, whatever is perceived through a mithya tool is also mithya. Just as whatever is seen through a blue glass is also blue, similarly, whatever is seen through the mithya mind is nothing but mithya. This is the aim of Vedanta. And therefore, yata chittasya. This example, upama, is an example for the well-directed mind, the disciplined mind. And what is that disciplined, restrained mind doing? Yunjataha. It is practicing. Practicing what? Yogam. So yogam here means atma dhyanam. And therefore, yunjata yogam atmanaha has to be taken as samadhi. And Shankara says, yunjata is to be taken as the mind uniting with atma. So there is the dhyam. What is the dhyam? What is dhyam?
The goal for which you're working?
Objectives.
Objective.
No. If you want to define dhyam properly, you have to define the triputi. What is the triputi?
Dhyata,
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 Dhyatra,
Dhyam,
dhyanam, and dhyam. Okay. So dhyatra is the meditator. Dhyanam is the process of meditation. Dhyam is the object of meditation. Okay, so this you must remember. And therefore, Shankara says, here the dhyam is only Atma. Okay. And this, of course, will be further talked about in the next 4 verses from verse 20 to 23. So Krishna is talking about the very peak, the culmination of Nididhyasana. So Nirvikalpa Samadhi is going to be defined in the following features, in the following sutras, which is actually verses, and 7 different aspects or features are going to be given by Krishna when he talks about Nirvikalpa Samadhi, right? Note, we must not make the mistake of taking Nirvikalpa Samadhi as something very mystical. A lot of people, a lot of teachers, when they talk about Samadhi, especially Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they present it as a very, very mystical affair. My dad used to say that anybody who's a mystic, he's a mystic. Why? Because everything he says is very mysterious. You can't understand at all. And that is not what we are looking at. So here we have to understand that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is nothing mystical. I remember about 8-10 months back, when my grandson was about 5-6 months old. He would lie on the cot and he would catch his toes and then he would focus on the toes, absolute concentration. If you try to distract him, nothing happens. You can poke him, you can talk to him, nothing happens. He is focused on that toe of his. That is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The methodology is what? To be completely absorbed in whatever you are doing. So if you are watching the IPL, and you are completely focused and you don't hear what your family members say, that is also a form of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That Samadhi in which distinction is not there. You are dead to the world. Only the object of your focus is in your mind. The point I'm making is that there is nothing mysterious about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. We should not try to present it as such. So it's a faculty. That faculty of total concentration is a faculty which everyone has. What is required to make that faculty manifest is an object of so much interest to you that your whole focus is on that object. So in Vedantic meditation, there is nothing mysterious. You are using that same natural faculty which you have to dwell upon what? Upon the Atma Akara Vrittihi, which is nothing but recalling your own nature. I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am the Sakshi of the body and the mind. And this idea is going to be expanded upon in the next few verses. We will read verse number 20.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, please, go ahead.
आपने बोला कुछ कि Shankara defines smrita, the word smrita, not as a controlled thought, not just a thought.
Did I say that?
No, I may have misunderstood.
No, I said Shankara described Yunjat as uniting the mind with the Deyam, the Atma.
हाँ वो तो मैं तुम्हें पर स्मृता word कम. I will listen.
Smrita is only, to recall. Recall. You just recall what is Smrita. Chintita. That is the word Shankara used. Smrita means Chintita, considered. Considered by whom? And Shankara adds in his commentary, considered by experts in Yoga Shastra. And that is why we quoted those two sutras.
Okay. So the word okay.
Okay. So we will read verse number 20. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya
yoga
sevaya
yatra chaivatmanatmanam pasyan atmani tushyati. So yatra. Yatra means yasmin kale. Yasmin kale means which kale, what time, during that time it means. During which time?
When there is division is gone.
During the Nididhyasanam time. So yatra means Nididhyasana kale, during the time of Nididhyasanam. Chittam uparamate. Uparamate is to withdraw. So chittam uparamate, where the mind has been withdrawn. Withdrawn from what? Withdrawn from all anatma. Total tranquility of mind is there. Chittam uparamanam is tranquility of mind. And like a waveless lake. And here, how is the mind made tranquil? It is through a special sadhana, Nididhyasanam. It is withdrawn from the preoccupation of the ahankara. What is the preoccupation of the ahankara? It is preoccupied with anatma always. And therefore, niruddham. The mind is restrained from anatma thoughts. So, chittam niruddham, mind is withdrawn from the anatma prapancha, which means it's withdrawn from all objects, withdrawn from relationships, withdrawn from all my roles as father, mother, student. Each role that I play, each role that the RC plays, to be more appropriate, comes with a whole set of problems. And therefore, during this Nididhyasanam time, I cannot afford the RC's problems to intervene. And therefore, Chittam Niruddham, I have to dispense with all the roles. And we have seen this before. Name mrityu shanka, name jati bhedaha, pita naiva me naiva mata na janma, na bandhur na mitram guru ne vasishyaha, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. Where is that?
Nirvana Shatakam.
Nirvana Shatakam. Okay, so that is part of the meditative technique, the Nididhyasanam. During meditation, I renounce all roles, and that is called Niruddham Chittam. Now, it's easy to say renounce all the roles, easy to say Niruddham Chittam. How do you do it? So Krishna adds Yoga Sevaya. Yoga Sevaya is by the practice of Ashtanga Yoga, by the practice of the first 5 angas: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and Pratyahara. These were called the Bahiranga Ashtanga Yoga, the Bahiranga part of it. So those 5 I use, and by practicing that, Chittam Uparamate, the mind remains calm, it is in silence. So this is one definition, the tranquility born out of mental restraint, Chitta Uparamanam. This is the first definition of Nididhyasanam, first feature of Nididhyasanam. Uparamati means to calm down. The first definition is that Nididhyasanam is that state born from this particular withdrawal of the anatma, where the mind calms down. Definition number 1. You can say definition of Nididhyasanam or definition of Samadhi. Okay. What is the second definition? You will find it in this verse itself. Atmanam Pashyan. Pashyan Atmani. Atmanam Chaiva Atmanat Manam. Atmana Atmanam Pashyan. So Atmanam Pashyan. He sees the Atman. Literally, Atmanam Pashyan. He sees the Atmanam, to be understood as he has understood very clearly the nature of the Atma. Why does Krishna bring in Atma over here when initially he has suggested that, Yoga Sevaya? By simply Chittam Niruddham, withdrawing the mind from Anatma, you get peace. Because if you silence the mind by only withdrawing from Anatma, the tranquility that you get, the peace that you get is apekshika. It is relative only, right? It is relative peace. It is apekshika shantihi, relative peace. It is not atyantika shantihi. It is not Vedantic peace. And that is not the objective of Nididhyasanam. So because, what is the objective of Nididhyasanam? The first objective is that you should have a relative peace. And that objective is to be obtained, is to be implemented, Yoga Sevaya Chittam Niruddham. By practicing the Ashtangas, you bring a relative peace of mind, a relatively tranquil mind. In that relatively tranquil mind, what have you to get? Manobuddhi ankara chittani naham, na cha shrotra jivhe, na cha grana netre, na cha vyoma bhumihi, na tejo na vayuhu, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. The teaching has to be recalled in that tranquil mind. That is why the first step is relative peace. In that relatively peaceful mind, when you recall the teaching, when the teaching is again and again recalled, then only will that relative peace turn into permanent Vedantic peace. And to know that, I must know the meaning of these lines. Manaha buddhihi ahankara chittani na aham. I must know the meaning of all these lines. These lines are not meant for repetition. They are not meant for parayanam. They have to be understood. They have to be tossed around in the mind and the meaning extracted, which means the mind is not a mind which is suppressed. The mind is a mind, it is not a passive mind. It is not a chitta vritti nirodha mind. The mind has got chitta vritti. The mind has got Vedantic thoughts. It's called sajatiya pratyaya pravaha. The flow, pravaha, flow of sajatiya pratyaya, of similar thoughts. Sajatiya means of the same species. Pratyaya is thoughts. Sajatiya pratyaya pravaha, flow of similar thoughts. Similar thoughts of what? This is the flow of similar thoughts. Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham, nacha shrotra jivhe, nacha ghrana netre, nacha vyoma bhumihi, na tejo na vayuhu, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. These are all sajatiya pratyaya pravaha, the flow of similar thoughts on the Atma. That flow of thoughts focused only on the Atma, that is called Atmanam Pashyan. So Krishna is saying one should remember the Atma, recall the description of the Atma as revealed by the Shastram, as revealed by your teacher. So without Vedantic Shravanam, we should always remember, without Vedantic Shravanam, Nididhyasanam is not possible at all. Why? Nididhyasanam is recalling what I have learned in Vedantic Shravanam. So meditation on the Atma is not possible without understanding what is the nature of the Atma. And where does he see this Atma? Atmani. So you will see there are many Atmas in this particular verse. Okay, so we'll come one by word. One by one, we'll come to that. Where does he see this Atma? Atmani. He sees it in the Atma. The second Atma here is what? The mind. Atmani means in the mind, he has to recall the teaching. So in the mind, he has to see the Atma. So Atmanam, Atmani Pashyan. That Atma, which means that teaching about the Atma which he has learnt in Shravanam, that teaching, where should it be seen? In the mind. So the final meaning is, in the mind, he has to recall whatever he has learnt in Shravanam, during Shravanam, whatever he has learnt about the Atma. So Shravanam, basically, during Shravanam, what is happening? Your mind is like a tape recorder. The old tape recorders, okay, nowadays we don't have them. In the old tape recorders, there were two functions. One is recording and one is playback. So during Shravanam, the recording button has been pressed and you are recording whatever the teacher is telling you in your mind. And during Nididhyasanam, you are playing back. The recalling function is going on. Obviously, you can recall only what you have recorded. And therefore, one should clearly understand the meaning of the words over here. The Atmanam means the Atma, the Paramatma. Atmani means in the mind. And there is a third word, Atmana, with the help of the mind itself. What does that mean? Atma, Atmana, Atmani. What does it mean? In the mind, Atmani, what is the instrument you use to recall? Atmana, the mind itself. Because thought is involved, vritti is involved. And this Atma, the Satchitananda Atma, the Paramatma, where is it to be found? It resides in the mind as the witness of my thoughts. And therefore the final meaning is, he recalls the Paramatma in himself with the help of the mind, or he recalls the Paramatma in the mind with the help of the mind, which basically means he is constantly claiming that I am the Paramatma. So that is Nididhyasanam. In Nididhyasanam, remember that the focus of the mind is an important feature, right? So I'll give an example. There is a clock in your room, okay, in your bedroom. Let us say there is a clock, one of the old clocks, okay, not the new digital ones, the old clock with a pendulum. Now you're sitting there and the clock is going tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. You're trying to meditate, right? Is that sound disturbing you or not? It's a hugely disturbing sound because you're trying to meditate, right? Talk, 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 talk. But you're watching a movie. You don't hear the sound at all. Is it because sound is not there? No. It is because there is an activity other than. So during meditation, remember, the sound is loud enough disturbed. While during the daytime, when you're doing something else, that same sound doesn't disturb. What is the reason?
The mind is engaged with other activities.
The mind is busy, right? The mind is busy. Therefore, in a silent mind, remember, the sound of the clock will disturb. It will be very loud. Similarly, in a silent mind, the teaching has got greater impact because it becomes louder and louder as your mind is silent and more silent. Which is why Krishna says, first get apekshika shanti through yoga sevaya. Through the first 5 limbs of Yoga Shastram, Yamaniya, Asana, Pranayama, etc., make the mind quiet. In that mind, sit down and meditate. With that silence in the mind, the teaching will be like the clock. It will be loud enough for you to hear. And it will become stronger and stronger. Remember that the knowledge doesn't take place during Nididhyasanam. In meditation, no new knowledge can be born. Right? You need Shravanam for that. And not meditation. You need to be awake. Jagrata Avastha, you need to be focused. You need Shravanam for that. So during Shravanam, knowledge is born, knowledge takes place. But during Nididhyasanam, you recall the same knowledge, the same teaching in a silent, withdrawn mind. And in that quiet state of mind, the teaching becomes louder and louder and more powerful. The jnanam registers very strongly in your mind. This registration of the jnanam in your mind, this driving of the jnanam into the subconscious mind, this is the conversion of jnanam into jnana nishtha. It becomes completely registered in your subconscious mind. Therefore, atmani, atmanam, atmana pashyati. And the second definition is also there. It can be called Atma Darshanam. Again, I will point out that in this Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you are not acquiring any jnanam, but you are recalling the jnanam obtained from Shravana. So this invocation of aparoksha Atma Jnana, that is what is being called Atma Darshanam. And Shankara adds here, Atmana means Parishuddha Antakaranena. With the help of a very purified mind, he recalls that Atma Jnana. What does Shankara mean by Parishuddha Antakaranam? Purified mind. He means the reduction of Viparita Bhavana. When a Vedantic student practices Nididhyasanam, for him, there is only one major impurity. That is Viparita Bhavana. What is another name for Viparita Bhavana for us? For the Nididhyasana yogi, we have been calling that Viparita Bhavana by another name. And that
The
is
habitual thinking patterns.
Sorry?
The habitual thinking patterns.
The
Raga
vasana,
dvesha.
the
Raga
vasana.
dvesha.
We have
Pratipaksh bhavana.
we have called it the triangular format. So your triangular format and binary format, those two words, though they are not there in Shastram, they are our own inventions. But that Viparita Bhavana is what we call triangular format. And when Shankara says Parishuddhena Antakaranena, he says drop your triangular format, triangular mindset behind and invoke the binary mindset again and again and again. That is what he's saying. Try to drop the triangular format and try to invoke the binary format as far as possible. What is the triangular format?
Jiva
Jagat
Ishvara.
Sorry?
Jiva Jagat.
Jiva Jagat Ishvara. What is the binary format?
Atman.
Atma.
Atma Anatma. In the Atma Anatma binary format, what are you?
Atma.
Atma.
And what is Anatma?
Mithya.
Mithya.
Correct.
There
So
is no another.
that is the real understanding. That we are calling it binary format. But remember, in the binary format, one is Satyam, that is the Atma, that is you. The Mithya is the Jagat. The Anatma is Mithya. And a Mithya Vastu is as good as not being there. If really speaking, when you say binary format, you are meaning the non-dual format, only Advaitic format. So invoke that set or that mindset all the time. What is the benefit of this particular type of invocation? Tushyati, he says, one feels the joy of Purnatvam. One feels the peace, lasting peace, which comes from Purnatvam. Okay. Now we look at the 21st verse. We will read. Sukham atyantikam yattad.
Sukham
आत्यन्तिकं
yat
यत्
Buddhigrahyamatīndriyam
बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियम्
vetti yatra na chayvayam
वेत्ति
Vetti
यत्र न
yatra
चैवायम्
sitaschalati tatvatah.
तिष्ठति तत्त्वतः
So yattad means that which is what? Atyantikam. Atyantikam means absolute. Atyantikam sukham, absolute happiness. And buddhigrahyam, grasped by the intellect. Atindriyam means indriya atitaha, beyond the intellect, beyond the indriyas. And yatra ayam vettihi, when one recognizes vettihi, when one recognizes this Atma as sthitaha, steady, tatvataha, the truth, na eva chalati, one never moves away. So two more definitions are given here. Atyantikam sukham, the highest limitless ananda, which is Brahmananda, Atmananda. Ananda means what? Fulfillment. This is different from Sukham. Sukham is experiential sense pleasures. That is why he adds the Visheshanam, the adjective Atyantikam, to show that it is the highest, limitless Ananda, and it is not a sense pleasure which is experienced. Why? Because all experienced sense pleasures are finite. They are finite time-wise, they are finite place-wise, they are finite quality-wise, they are finite quantity-wise. So all experiential sense pleasures experienced by the sense organs, they are always kala parichinnaha, limited by time and limited by space also. Always limited by time and space. Whereas this Atyantikam Sukham, this Brahmananda, this Atmananda, is limitless Ananda, different from experiential pleasure. Remember that the Ananda obtained in Samadhi is not Atyantika Ananda. Why?
It lasts only as long as the samadhi is there.
It will last only as long as the Samadhi lasts, and therefore it is limited by time. It is Kala Parichanna. Okay, so Kala Parichannaha and Desha Parichannaha, these are limitations of experience pleasure. This limitation does not apply to Atma Ananda. And this Buddhi Grahyam, a very carefully worded phrase, this Atmananda, Buddhi Grahyam here means it will be attained only through understanding, through the intellect only, which means it is not available for sense pleasures. It's not available for experience through the senses, and therefore Buddhi Grahyam, Buddhya eva Grahyate, that which can be understood only through the intellect, which is Atmananda. What does the sentence mean? Knowing that I am, I was, and I will always be Purnaha. During meditation, I am Purnaha. Before that, I was Purnaha. When I get up, also, I will be Purnaha. This Ananda, born of this Buddhi, born of this knowledge, is permanent. Because remember that knowledge can never be displaced by time and space. Like when I was 5 years old, I learnt that 2 plus 6 is equal to 8. Now I am 70 years old. That knowledge of 2 plus 6 is equal to 8 does not change. I may have learned 2 plus 6 is equal to 8 when I was in New York. But that knowledge doesn't change when I am in Ahmedabad. So time and space do not displace that knowledge, nor do the set of circumstances. When you are happy or unhappy or wealthy or poor, 2 plus 6 is still equal to 8. And therefore, no experience can displace knowledge. This Ananda, this knowledge is what my Ananda comes from my internal self. That knowledge can never be shaken. This is Purnatvam. This sense of fulfillment born out of this Jnanam, it is called Atyantika Sukham, and therefore Buddhi Grahyam. It can be understood only. It cannot be experienced by the senses, and therefore Indriyam Atitaha, beyond the sense organs. Sense pleasures are only finite. They can never be infinite. And Shankara says that the intellect which does not employ the sense organs, that is also meant over here. And therefore, this is the third definition of Nididhyasanam, Atyantika Sukham. Infinite Ananda which cannot be generated. And since that Ananda is not born, since it doesn't have a beginning, it also doesn't have an end. And therefore, Nityaha, Nitya Atma Ananda. Then the next word is Veti. Veti means he knows. Again, the moment you say knows, you are bringing the intellect into the picture, indicating that this Ananda is a form of knowledge and not a form of experience. And he claims himself as this Ananda. That is the third definition. In the same verse, you have one more definition. Yatra ayam sthitaha na tatvataha chalati. What does it mean? Yatra ayam sthitaha. Steady in this knowledge, knowing that I am the Atma. Na tatvataha chalati. One does not ever get distracted again. There is nothing to distract you There is nothing to bring about anatma thoughts. And Shankara translates the word ayam. Yatra ayam sthitaha. Shankara says, ayam here has to be taken as a vidwan, a jnani, who is practicing nididhyasanam for moving out of the triangular format into the binary format. Of course, Shankara only says vidwan practicing nididhyasanam or vidwan, which means ajnani. Ajnani here is a person who is doing nididhyasanam. His objective is to move to binary format. So a person who practices this will never lose this knowledge even during the worst crisis. And therefore only na tatvaha chalati. Tattva here means atma, chalati means move away. Tatvataha na chalati means he does not move away from the atma. He does not move away from his higher nature. He does not lose sight of his higher nature. He remembers his higher nature all the time. And for a person who is established in his higher nature all the time, life becomes a drama. Just as the actor playing different roles in a drama does not forget who really he is at home, right? Just like him, this person does not ever forget who he really is. This actor, for example, when he wants to drop the role, what does he do? In between roles, he goes to the green room. In the green room, he knows who he is. Then when he goes back to the stage again he dons a role. This going to the green room is what we call nididhyasanam. And you have to keep on doing this until you can play the role on stage, but you do not lose track of who you really are. Your one leg is perpetually in the green room. And that's why Krishna said, Pashyan Shrinvan Sprashan Jigran, Asnan Gachan Swapanchvasan, Pralapan Visarjan Grandan, Unnimisham Nishannapi. Whatever you are doing, whatever transaction you are doing, never lose sight of what you really are, of who you really are. The correct word is what, because you are Brahman. Brahman is not who. And therefore, yatra sthitaha, remaining in that Atma Swarupa, one does not thereafter lose track of that Atma Swarupa. In no transaction do I forget that I am Atma. My RC may continue to do transactions, but I don't forget that I am Atma. This kind of a transactional samadhi is called Sahaja Samadhi. Therefore, remembering my real nature alone, that is the remembering the Vedantic teaching, that is the difference between who? A samsari and a jivan mukta. There is nothing mysterious. Samsari doesn't know his real nature, and even if he knows, in the hustle bustle of transactions, he forgets. The jivan mukta, he knows that he knows the green room status, that he is Atma. And he may don all the roles. Just like the samsari, he will play all the roles. But unlike the samsari, he never forgets the green room. That is the difference between samsari and jivan mukta. So with this, we'll stop the teaching for today. Any questions? Otherwise, we can go on to the nididhyasanam session.
Acharya,
Yes, June and then Munmun. Yeah.
what was the name of the samadhi, of the transactional samadhi? Could you repeat?
Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja. Sahaja means easy. You always remember who you are.
Okay.
Yes, Munmun?
Yeah, Om Acharya. In 20, that three Atmas Will you please repeat once that first, second, and third? One is
Atmana,
mind.
Atmanam,
Yeah.
Atmani.
Yeah. So
Atmanam
first
is
start.
Atmanam is your Atma, Atma, Satchidananda Atma. Basically, remembering the teaching. So Atmanam here represents the teaching about the Atma. Atmani represents in your mind, and Atmana represents with the mind. So Atmana, Atmani means remember in the mind by using the mind. The locus for the thought is the mind. The instrument for bringing that thought is also the mind, and therefore Atmana, Atmani.
Okay. So two mind and one self.
One is using the mind as a tool, one is using the mind as a locus,
Mind.
and the third
And
is
the third one is self.
is a teaching. Don't say
Thank you,
self and
sir.
all. We want to eliminate this self word from your mind. Okay.
Okay.
Say
Then
Atma.
I'm Atma teaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So Acharya ji, the one who is in Sahaja Samadhi is a Jnana-nishtha, and will he still require to practice Nididhyasanam?
He is in constant Nididhyasana.
So unlike
The very recalling is called Nididhyasanam. You don't say that he requires Nididhyasanam anymore because that has become a not natural state for him. The artificial state of remembering your real nature is called Nididhyasanam. When that
Yes.
state becomes embedded in you, becomes your natural state, that is Jivanmukta.
That is why it is Sahaja.
That is why it is Sahaja.
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Now we will look at our what do you call today's Nididhyasanam. And what shall we do for that Nididhyasanam? I was looking at something called one of the problems which we regularly face is, the idea of Nididhyasanam is that you take care of all viparita bhavana, all sort of problems which you have, right? And one of the problems is the lack of contentment which we have. Do you agree that mostly we are discontent? Or at least if as advanced seekers you don't agree with that, then maybe you'll agree with the statement, sometimes I am discontent. Would you agree with that? Right. So
Yes.
this discontentment is there in all of us. And today's Nididhyasanam is aimed at handling that discontentment. So please sit back, straight back in your chair. Close your eyes. Gently take a few deep breaths, pulling your mind away from the class, relaxing your mind. The Sanskrit word is atriptihi, discontent, discontentment. So in life, I find I have achieved very many things. And yet, none of them has given me prolonged contentment. So I am still atriptaha. I am not content. I want to achieve more. I may have achieved many, many things, wealth, fame, name, etc. But I feel incomplete. I feel I have not benefited. And therefore, what do? I still feel incomplete. I recall all the efforts which I have made, all the sacrifices which I have made for these achievements, for getting these achievements of wealth, fame, name. I have made many, many sacrifices. I may have given up my home. I may have moved away from my parents. I may have moved away from my family. I may have given up certain comforts. And I would have had bosses who really didn't deserve to be served because they lacked a particular sense of value. But they were my bosses, so I served them. And because I wanted to progress, I may have swallowed insults from my bosses also. I may have not said what I want to say because I wanted to please them. So I did namaskara to all these worthless people. But none of them served a purpose. Why? Because I am still atraptaha. I am not content. My desire for more achievements is as strong as ever. And this desire can be like fire, right? Why we are talking about fire is because a hungry person, after a lot of feeding, will say no at some point of time. But the fire of desire can never be quenched. The more desires that are satisfied, the stronger that fire is. I usually delude myself with the obsession or with the thought that I am atriptaha because I have only one desire and that has not been fulfilled. But I have not understood that atripti with one desire is only the tip of the problem. The moment that desire is satisfied, like the iceberg, you will find that below that there are many more desires, and therefore atripti is there for many more desires. I must handle this by meditating upon the fact that I have satisfied so many of my desires in the past, often at cost to me and my family. But I find, despite satisfying so many desires, the problem of atripti continues. It has not gone away. Often, I may find that there are some friends who have devoted their whole lives to taking care of their family. At some point, some family member asks, when have you done anything for me at all? And so I am unsatisfied with the world and I turn to religion. I do puja, I do upasana, I do tirtha yatra. But what do I find? The atripti does not go away. It is only when I begin to think about this, the Shastram tells me that the cause of atripti is the feeling, the idea that I am not Purnaha. And if I am not Purnaha, I am finite. I am Apurnaha. The distance between the finite and the infinite is always infinite. Whether I have only 100 rupees or whether I have 100,000 crores, the distance between me and Purnatvam is what? Infinite only. And therefore, I have to remember that any material goal will always take me from atripti to atripti. There are only two ways of attaining contentment. One is apekshika shantihi, relative contentment through karma yoga. One is atyantika shantihi, permanent contentment through jnana yoga. And therefore, let me recall the teaching that aham apurnaha is mithya. It's an error. It's an error arising from my understanding that I require something to make me complete. Once I have understood that I am Purnaha, I will understand there is nothing I require, there is nothing that is remaining to be acquired. With that understanding, I will be triptaha. I will be content. There will be no more atripti. Therefore, this nididhyasanam, aham brahma asmi, aham purnaha, is the only solution to get rid of my atriptihi status. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Any
Om
questions?
Shivaya.
Om
Thank
Om
you.
Namah
Acharya.
Thank you, Acharya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you. Thank you, Acharya. Thank you.
Om
Thank you, Ravi.
Tat Sat, Om Namah
Om
Shivaya.
Om Namah
Thank you for your
Shivaya.
patience. Om.
Thank you, Acharya.